Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this is Outside My Window. After a 2-year hiatus, the popular Yarmouth Spring Living Show is making its return to the Yarmouth Mariners Centre, May 6th to the 8th, featuring stage presentations, workshops, and an arena floor full of exhibitors. Rick Allwright and Candice Phibbs of Mile East Productions are pleased to report that the comeback show is gearing up to be a great one, and we're glad to hear that. Welcome back to the podcast, folks.
Thanks for having us.
So, when did you start planning the return? Obviously, there's a lot of work to it, so tell us about that.
Well, I think a part of it's been, we've always been in planning mode, just waiting to pull the trigger really to do one. We were even hoping to have done this last year. So it's been planning mode more or less on a slow burn for a while. And then really pulled the trigger probably in December to move ahead with it for May.
So give us an outline of what you got planned for the Spring Living Show for this year.
So we reached out to all those exhibitors that were booked for 2020, and we were gearing up in 2020 for our 5th year anniversary show when we had to shut everything down. So we reached out to them, gave them the first opportunity to come back and fill up the arena floor at the Yarmouth Mariners Centre. And so many exhibitors very excited to come back, and some unfortunately not able to come back this year because they just don't have stock, which is, an issue with a lot of businesses right now. But we do have the large arena floor filling up at the Yarmouth Mariners Centre. We're bringing back the stage presentations and currently working through scheduling those out, but we're going to have presentations on landscaping, gardening, etc. And we're also going to have some workshops available. So we're working with a few different partners to bring in a nautical wreath workshop. We're going to have a cookie decorating workshop, an herb, like make your own herb garden workshop. So those have just been confirmed, and we're kind of moving into advertising those to fill up because those workshops do have a limited number of seats available for them. So between the trade show floor, the stage presentations, and the workshops, you could come and you could spend a whole day at the Spring Living Show between those different elements.
And remind us again of the dates.
May 6th to the 8th. And Friday, we open the show at 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. Saturday starts at 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. So it's a long day. And Sunday is 10 until 3.
Sounds like you got an audience in behind you there. It's the world we live in now. Cats, dogs, kids running through. It's all part of the show. It's all good. So with the Spring Living Show, if memory serves me correct from the last time I was there, you had a really end-to-end kind of list of contributors. You had beekeeping, you had solar, you had nursery stuff. I mean, is it similar vein?
Yeah, we try to have as wide a range as possible. So it is going to be that wide range of exhibitors again. There are new ones. There are that have popped up and want to be involved. So it's been great to see some of the new businesses that have popped up over COVID actually to want to be involved in the show. So it will be that wide range of exhibitors that most people have been used to and have seen in the past.
Let's take a step back for a little bit and revisit, and I know it might be a little painful, but revisit COVID. And I mean, certainly as an event producer, getting the rug pulled out from under you via the pandemic must have been really tough. But you guys seem to pivot really well with that. Can you just kind of give us an idea of how you came about all of those changes?
Yeah, we, as I mentioned, gearing up for a big show in May of 2020. It was mid-March that we had to kind of pull the plug on it, and it just wasn't going to be possible, which it's our largest revenue generating production. So that was really challenging, and we knew that we needed to do something to kind of fill in the gap. The two-week shutdown that we were supposed to have went to 4, went to 6, and people wanted something to do. So we tried to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. So, well, one of the first things we did was just to more or less fill our own time was to do some online trivia, just to on over Zoom. Is just more or less something to do for us, and it was a interesting thing that people did take to it, and we wanted to be a part of it, and it gave everyone a little something to look forward to every week. So one of the little things that we did, and that kind of moved into virtual events as well, and doing some live streaming. So I had seen a lot of other production companies moving to doing live streaming, and so we reached out to Larry Hattie at Ocean Blue Music. He was in the same position we were, and like, you want to partner and do something just to use all the equipment that we have basically, and have some fun at the same time. So and hopefully drive a little bit of revenue. So that's kind of where we shifted to in a big part in the first little bit. In the first little while for the live stream, it was more or less learning what we were doing, because we were kind of making it up as we went. But that has turned into a decent revenue stream for both our businesses since that point, especially when we hit the summer there, and then into this past summer, and even moving into this year, we're still doing more. Yeah, so that was one of the concepts. We did proms as another.
Yeah, the proms kind of came at us, and that was, again, it was kind of late in the school year, which the school year ended early, I guess, in 2020. But Barrington High School was the first to reach out, and the parents who were on the prom committee working with the students had said the kids worked all year to fundraise for their prom, and to not be able to do something, like, it was just breaking their hearts. And can we figure out some way to make this possible? So we worked with a parent committee. We worked with the municipality of Barrington. We knew social distancing needed to be kept in mind, masking and all of that. So instead of using a school, we pivoted and got permission to use the arena, lots of space for the student population there. And then the École Secondaire de Clare reached out as well in 2020 and wanted to do a prom. Same thing. They had a really engaged class and parents. And we ended up having that one outdoors in a tent on the grounds of a property in Clare. So it was something new for us. It's been a few years since we've attended a prom. Actually, Rick never went to a prom. So between 2020 and 2021, Rick has accompanied me to 7 proms in 1 year.
Does he clean up nice? I didn't see any pictures of him in a suit.
There are some pictures
There's
around.
some pictures out there of us in a lovely golf shirt for the prom. But in 2021, the proms just grew. We did 5 proms in 2021 in 24 days.
Wow.
So it was just a matter of the schools couldn't have it happen on the premises. The kids wanted it to happen. Word had spread that we did these 2 in 2020, and how can we make this happen for them in 2021? And it was a crazy 24 days, but everything went well. All the kids that came out for their prom were happy that they had the opportunity to celebrate that milestone in their high school career.
And it must feel good that you were able to facilitate all that.
Yeah,
It really does.
It really, the reason they happened really is the event industry was kind of throwing a bone from the provincial government that we as professionals could put on these sorts of events, but basically anyone else could not. So it kind of opened up a little bit of a window there to really allow us to do these things, and it worked out well in the end. So yeah.
I know that, for our group at the Mariner Center, trying to keep up with all the changing rules and regulations and gathering limits and everything else in between was a huge challenge. So it must have
Yeah.
been really stressful for you guys.
Yeah, it definitely was. And um, we were lucky enough that we were consulted a lot by the government about the restrictions, and how to make them work best for event planners and event venues. We had that direct channel with government to be able to kind of have that influence. So we didn't obviously get what we wanted a lot of the times, but we at least had that input, and we had the direct knowledge and resources to go ask the questions, and get the clarifications quickly and easily. So as much of it was a challenge, we did have the right connections in order to make them. We had the best knowledge we possibly could, and we really did become, for basically all event planners and venues in the area, kind of like that sounding board that could kind of guide people in the right direction. And if we didn't know the answer, we could get it fairly quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly from our end with MC Media, it was a bit of a challenge to try to keep up with, what was allowed for hockey and what wasn't allowed for hockey. And I mean, there was a few games that we did with no fans.
Yep.
There is nothing spookier, I might add, than doing a hockey game with no fans. It sounds like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that would be great. You got nobody in your way. You can do what you need to do. But no,
There's no energy.
no, none.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, for television broadcasts, they're piping in crowd sounds and all that kind of stuff. And all right, fine, maybe. I don't know what the atmosphere is like on the ice, but I know for us it was really spooky to be able to just
for
go
sure.
out. You could hear the refs talking to the bench and all the kids on the ice talking to each other, and it's like you could never ever hear that any other time.
Yeah.
And so it was really weird. And the other side, of course, for us was the parents. So I mean, when they could drop off the kids, but they couldn't stay.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it from looking at the parking lot because the parking lot was packed. But that's all the
Yeah.
parents sitting outside, tapping into
Watching
the
it on their
Wi-Fi,
phone.
watching it
Yeah.
on their phones because we're live streaming a game, right? So it was a bit of an uptick for us as well. We were live streaming way more than what we had before. But hey, you try to feed into your community, and I'm sure you felt the same way in being able to do the proms and some of the other events.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
The spring show is a huge event, a lot of moving parts. Now, I know as hardworking, diligent, and professional as you both are, you can't do it by yourself. So can you talk about, staff, volunteers, and what role they play in this from setting up to taking down?
Yeah, it happens at the Yarmouth Mariner Center, so we get great support from the staff of the Mariner Center in that initial setup of the trade show floor. Rick's on site to kind of oversee and make sure, the booths that need to go where they go get set up properly. But great support from their staff. As far as when the show opens, we actually partner for the Spring Living Show with the Yarmouth Rotary Club. So the revenue supports the Yarmouth Rotary Club, and in return, they provide us with Rotarians to staff the show. So it's the Yarmouth Rotary Club who you see at the front desk when you come in to get your tickets. And they come in early, do the vacuum of the floors, help flip the stage if necessary, flip the workshop rooms, um, help exhibitors load in, load out if needed. So it's a great partnership that we've established with the Yarmouth Rotary Club, and it's beneficial to both of us.
Yeah, it's a way we operate a number of our events is to utilize a volunteer group who is looking to fundraise and has the right skills and resources, that we're looking for to put on the event. So kind of like we do the Starlight Runway run as well, and for that we utilize the Yarmouth Ground Search and Rescue team who just has the skills in order to get that job done, and they're always looking to fundraise. So we always look for those great partnerships that make the most sense, and in what we do. So yeah.
Events like the spring show have been shut down for 2 years, and people have been shut down for 2 years. They must be very anxious to get out to a show like this, especially after this seemingly very long winter we've had. What kind of feedback are you hearing, just chatting with people on a daily basis?
We're seeing a fair bit of interest in returning to events. It shows in research provincially as well that people want to get back to events. They want to attend. Um, they want to get out of their houses and
Yeah,
just
I agree
be with
there.
people, right? Like we're social creatures, and we just haven't really been with people in a long time. There's definitely still some apprehension among the population. Just there's a portion of the population that is still scared and concerned around the spread of COVID and other diseases. It's just only the COVID extrapolated that a bit more than what we've seen in the past. But there will be some measures taken to make sure that people feel comfortable when they're in. We're still going to encourage people to social distance. If you want to wear a mask, please wear a mask. There's definitely going to be hand sanitizer everywhere, just to make sure that the in between crowd that will come out, but still not 100% comfortable, make them feel just a little bit more comfortable. So, and we're seeing that across events around the country. Really, it's the same idea.
And as far as interest in the community, certainly hearing people mention, spring living shows coming back and they're looking forward to that. From an exhibitor point of view, we have an exhibitor that was just at the garden and RV show, I think it's called, in Halifax last weekend. And they said it was phenomenal. The people coming out to that, and they are so looking forward to being in Yarmouth and seeing, similarities in the crowd coming out.
Beyond attendance, after the show's over, how do you gauge the success of an event like that? Interacting with the exhibitors obviously is very important, getting their feedback.
Yeah, it comes down to a lot of their feedback in the end. A lot of them are hoping to have good sales days on that floor. There's a number of them that's how they measure their success, and then there's them. They also kind of measure how they do after, in the immediate after, because there's plenty of people that will not buy on the floor, but will buy in the days after. So we kind of keep track of that with the vendors, it's more anecdotal than anything in a lot of cases after the fact, but just to be able to keep track of where they are. We also do surveys of both participants and vendors, basically immediately after the show, just because we're always learning. We always want to improve. So we want that feedback, and we're happy to get it.
So above and beyond the spring living show, what else is on your docket for the summer?
It's going to be a busy one. So in the, I guess this will be our second full year with we went into the event rental business as well. So we have a full summer for weddings and putting up tents and chairs and tables and all that stuff. They were booked solid basically from early June to October. There isn't a weekend off in there.
Wow.
Then there's we have a number of other private events that are happening that we're planning. We do some wedding planning as well. In addition to that, we are working with Rib Fest in Yarmouth Rib Fest, another Rotary event. So we're assisting with the logistics of that. So that'll be a big one, big new one for us, really. And we got another event in May, which will be announced next week. And then, it's going to be a busy summer all around.
Well, just the weddings alone. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm friends with Hartley Reed, and I mean, he does wedding DJing, I know that, pre-COVID, there wasn't a weekend through the summer that he wasn't doing something, right? I mean, there was always a wedding, at least one to kind of go into. But, as things sort of slide a little bit back to normal, does the return of the ferry help or, drive into any of the events that you're working with?
Most of what we're doing is more local based events anyways. um I would say, like, would there be people from the get off the ferry to come to Rib Fest? Maybe there might be. I don't think it'd be the reason they come, but they might show up. um Certainly supportive of the ferry. We're definitely in that business. We support them 100%, and um do some tourism based business a little bit as well with the walking tours that Candice puts on. So, but for far as events, it doesn't really affect us either way. But yeah, the walking tour thing is definitely.
Yeah. So having the ferry return, I'm interested to see how that changes with bookings for the walking tours. I started the tours one day a week in 2016, I believe. And I saw 10% growth from year 1 to year 2. And then year 2 to 3, the ferry was meant to move to Bar Harbor and it didn't run. So I saw a 40% drop in bookings, which was tough. And then we had COVID for 2 years. So walking tour season hasn't been great for 3 years now. So I'm really interested and hopeful that, we'll see that tourism business pick up for that piece of our business. But as far, like Rick said, as far as the other events go, our target is the local audience. And then if there happens to be tourists around that hear of an event that we're a part of, they're certainly welcome, but they're not necessarily the target.
So in your spare time, haha, um, you, you've managed to do a fundraiser that pushed out like 2,000 pierogies and a bunch of other things in between. How did you manage to throw that together? I mean, obviously you probably could have sold a whole lot more pierogies than what you had, but it looked like you had quite the crew putting that together as it was.
Yes, that was a big undertaking. So when I came up with the idea, I knew I wanted to do something for Ukraine with food. So I have a strong Ukrainian background. My maternal grandparents immigrated to Canada from Ukraine in 1949 after World War II. Um, and that's the first thing that came to mind was something with food. We've made pierogies at home, and that's the direction I went. And I really had no idea how it would be received. I kind of was like, oh, if we get 100 dozen orders, that would be great. And 24 hours after I posted it, I had 100 dozen orders. I'm like, okay, well, we'll go a little bit higher, 200 dozen and 250 dozen. And I was like, okay, I gotta call, I gotta call it
You got to
here.
cut it off somewhere.
I gotta cut it off somewhere because I'll be making pierogies for a week and still not be caught up. But I love this community because people want to help beyond just let me buy some food. Can I come out and help? Can I roll dough? Can I mash potatoes? And I could have had a list of volunteers to help as long as the list of people who wanted to buy. Um, I was worried that, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have a job for everyone who wants to help, but it worked out wonderfully. We had lots of people, we had a good rhythm going, and in the end, 3,500 pierogies. So not
Wow.
2,000, 3,500 pierogies went out the
Wow.
door, and 1,500 frustiki, which is a dessert.
Yeah, I
It
wasn't even
was
going to try to pronounce that.
you got to really roll that R.
No, I can't do it.
But it was really, really good. It was something I wanted to do, and um, I don't know that we had the time, but we made the time for it to happen, and we will recover at some point from that. But I'm glad I did it. I wish I could do more, but I'm glad I did something.
Food and music seem to be the two universal truths to bring people together in one form or another. So, kudos to you guys for being able to do that. And you and I talked about pierogies at one point there. I was like, all right, it's one of my favorite little treats to eat, but store-bought pierogies just don't come
No.
close. And I like to cook. I'm not a baker, but I like to cook. So, doing something in the pasta family, it seems like something I could probably manage without too much trouble. But did you do any behind the scenes filming and like a workshop, maybe a how-to video while you're at it?
I didn't. I just didn't have quite the time, but people have asked, like, "We'd like to learn how to make them, and would you
There you
do a
go.
workshop?"
Yes.
So that on a smaller scale, people could come and have a hand at each step of the process and then go home with, 2 dozen for themselves. And it's something I'd certainly consider, but it's gonna be late fall at this point because the summer's a little booked up.
Well, between all your events and walking the dogs, uh, you really don't have any spare time, do you?
Not really. There's not much. We find a little bit of time here and there, but it's pretty few and far between. Um, yeah, we both have full-time jobs, and then this business is at least another full-time job, if not more.
So what inspired you to kind of do that and fill your schedules in so much that way?
It just came down to there was there was a need we felt in the community to put on events. So many people traveled to Halifax, to, Bridgewater, Wolfville, etc., for craft beer festivals, for trade shows, etc. Um, why not have it here? We're a big community, for this region. We're a regional center, and there's venues here that there's the opportunity for it to work.
Yeah.
Rick worked for Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism for a number of years and sat on so many committees to drive events forward, to the point of, well, if we're making these events happen, let's make them happen,
Yeah.
with a business to do that.
Yeah, it really came down to we were I was already organizing enough events that it was, well, we just need to do this on a more consistent manner. Basically, we were doing big things, but um, there was obviously that interest in other events, and the thing we always heard was there isn't anything to do. There isn't anything to do in town. Why aren't there more events? And like it's like, so we said, well, okay, let's do it. Um, and now we're hearing it from other communities um, further afield than here, that we've done a few little things in the past, and they're they're asking like, well, why can't we do more? Like, what else can you bring? What else can we do? That we're very quickly approaching the point where um, this is very much a full-time job, and we need other people with us. We're gonna have to hire staff. We're just to that point. Um, and I think that this does go beyond Yarmouth at this point. Like we've done craft beer festival in Bridgewater in February, and it's very popular, and that community really wants other things to happen, and they don't have the people to do it, or at least so it seems. So we are branching out. We are looking at those opportunities, and it. I don't think we intended. I don't think we started this with the intention of being this busy, but it's kind of gone that way.
We live, as you know, in such a wonderfully rich, diverse country, and I was just amazed at the pictures from the fundraiser. Did you find during that event that a lot of people were were not aware of the Ukrainian culture. How many Ukrainian Canadians that we have? Were they asking questions about the culture and perhaps the history?
Yeah, we had a little table set up. My mom had traveled here from Ontario and she had brought a few items, from her parents. I had a few items in my home that I had inherited after my grandparents passed away. So we set up a little table with those items and artifacts on them, and it was really nice to see people stop and pause and look at those items. I heard some stories of others who, had grandparents who were first generation who had immigrated, so they were first or second generation Canadians, and um, I I guess I was surprised myself. I didn't know how many Ukrainians were in this area. The area I'm from originally in Ontario has quite a cluster of Ukrainian, um, and they have Ukrainian halls and Ukrainian churches, etc. So it's very prominent in the community. I've traveled out west and they have a huge Ukrainian population in Saskatchewan and Alberta. But I really didn't know that there were many here. And I'm glad to see them in the community. And I wish I had known, I wish it didn't take a war to know that that culture was, all around me.
I think unfortunately, when you have world events that go in a direction like that, uh, it does bring out the curiosity over how things are going and where things end up. And certainly when you look at immigration into Canada, um, you know there is some resistance from some folks over immigration, but I think that you know Canada has a lot of pride in what we've done over the years and being able to welcome people into our area and be able to do that with open arms. And I think and hope that with what's gone on the world stage, and I'm trying not to be political, with what's going on the world stage, that we're able to continue to do that.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to about to change anytime soon. It's kind of just who we are as Canadians at this point. I don't think that's about to, as much as there might be a little bit of resistance to it, I don't think that small minority is going to outpower what the majority of Canadians really feel is a major part of them.
And then we're back to music and food,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what bring and when you look at during the pandemic, one of the Facebook groups here, the country or the kitchen party group, music group on Facebook, just mushroomed out of control. It was unreal. And they're still going. I mean, obviously
Still
things have
happen,
opened
yeah.
back up, but they're still posting and they still have plenty of things going on. I mean, that kept people kind of going.
Well, and I think it just for that musician community, it just gave them an outlet because they just didn't have it anymore. It just disappeared overnight,
Oh yeah.
and they just needed something, and that really provided it for them. And they needed that as much as anyone else. It was just their outlet.
And it wasn't just amateur; it's mainstream. I mean, you take somebody like
Absolutely.
Burton Cummings. He's been doing an online podcast style virtual event. Brian Adams has done a bunch of stuff. A lot of mainstream bands have reverted to that or resorted to that kind of atmosphere in order to be able to maintain presence and
Absolutely.
continue to be relevant in the community. Now that we're back to quote unquote normal, if you really want to call it that. I mean, sure, concerts are happening, but just like what we've seen with the Mariners games and the like, people are still a little skittish yet
Yeah,
to come out
absolutely.
and be shoulder to shoulder with folks in an arena or a gathering setting. But hopefully, that doesn't translate into people not showing up for events like the Spring Living Show that's coming up. So here we are. We're in the middle of April. It's Volunteer Month, and I know we've talked a little bit about volunteers, but I want to give you a chance to give a shout out to your teams that you've had to deal with in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, Rotary Club's obviously a huge one. They're small but mighty group. Really, they've been a major part of our success, really, of making this happen.
Yeah, the Starlight Runway Run happened for a number of years, coming back this fall. Ground search and rescue is a big part of that. So we really appreciate the support that they provide. And for other events, we worked on Communities in Bloom a few years ago. We worked on the Nova Scotia 55 plus games that was here in September of last year. So there's a number of volunteers that I always tell them at the end of an event, I never lose a contact. So they'll hear from me again. And I just appreciate them so much. It really takes so many people to bring an event to fruition. And the volunteers in this community are second to none. I've worked with so many of them, and we're always so blown away by what they're willing to give of their time and resources, their knowledge, and they're always willing to come back when we ask. And I'm so appreciative of that. And my phone is filling up with numbers, and it's always a big thank you and a smile from them, and they're glad to come back.
Well, I can't wait for the pierogi workshop myself, but that's just me.
The success of that fundraiser, I mean, it was huge, beyond the money that was raised, which is the most important part. But just the sheer amount of food that was prepared, the pierogies and other things, do you think that really, people sit back and look at that and say, yeah, we can do that as a community, sort of that can-do attitude helped bolster that, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I can't remember the number that we think we were at one point for volunteers that were on site at one point. I think it was like between 30 and 45 volunteers at the peak. And I do think it does show, at least that group, we did it. Like, this is a major accomplishment. And volunteers do love to know that, what they accomplished, they can see it, and they very much saw it in the pierogies. Every single one that they touched.
Single one, the tables laid out with pierogies to cool, like thousands on a table. At the end, we kind of broke down. We tried to do the math as best we could for how many potatoes and all of the ingredients we needed, but 140 pounds of potato, like that's a lot of spud.
Yeah.
Man, it's a lot of spud. We had 80 pounds of flour, I believe,
in total. Yeah,
in total 80 pounds of flour, like all of these tangible amounts that
became
something.
Yes.
And yeah, the volunteers, as the process is going on, they're seeing this come together, and they're seeing us get to that final number, and it's just such a good feeling that they contributed to, and that they could see the whole process happen.
Candice and Rick, we can't thank you enough, and we hope you have a very successful show. I want to remind folks that the Yarmouth Spring Living Show at Mariner Center from May 6th to 8th, and all the best. And it was great chatting with you folks again.
It's great to be on the show. I think I don't know how many times we've gone on it, but a few now. So
we've had you on separately, but never together.
Never together. Yeah.
Never together. So this is good. And just remind folks again, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, they can head to our website, mileeast.com, or they can find us on Facebook, Mile East Productions, or Instagram as well at Mile East Productions.
If they're looking specifically for the Spring Living Show, it's springlivingshow.com.
I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this has been Outside My Window.